Today on Locked On Rockies, the All-Star Game, baseball's All-Star Game specifically, reminds us that it's the best version in sports, and we continue to look ahead to the second half by asking a simple but important question: who needs a strong second half?
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 17th day of July in the year 2025. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. If your team is the Colorado Rockies, guess what? You're in the right spot, because that's what we do around here every day, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you can be part of the show. You can fire off your Rockies hot takes. You can let me know what's on your mind when it comes to the Colorado Rockies. And if you want to be part of the show, fire off those hot takes. Let me know what's on your mind when it comes to the Colorado Rockies in the Locked On Rockies YouTube comment section below. What's on your mind as the Rockies need 20 wins to get to that win number 42 here, and it starts with a series at home against the Twins. And that's going to be kind of one of the themes that we'll talk about here today, as well as we're looking at continuing to look into the second half and stuff we want to see. But I wanted to dive into the All-Star Game a little bit as well. All that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we go any further, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So, before we go into Rocky stuff, I wanted to just kind of, and I'll start this, was I understand the issues and the frustrations people have had with the All-Star Game voting system, with they got that Brewers pitcher in there that only had the 5 starts. You know, there's kind of some XYZ reasons that people were a little upset about the All-Star Game. But I think what makes baseball's All-Star Game not only different, but actually an entertaining product. And, you know, it was long. It went long. There was a lot of, you know, there's obviously a lot of fluff, a lot of pomp and circumstance there. But at least in the baseball All-Star Game, there's always effort. You know, it might not be a full speed sprint down the line or something like that, but guys are still going up and pumping a 100. Guys are still going up trying to hit bombs. When you're watching the All-Star Game with baseball, and you're getting the on-the-field player interviews, you're getting all that stuff, it still is a baseball game, right? You might have your issues with the player, you know, my guy didn't get in, or they're the snubs and all that stuff. But at least it's a baseball game still. Even with the cool, you know, and say what you will, but it's just what I like about baseball is it's the 2 days where they really make it a very kind of modern and accessible game where it's Kershaw is talking into the mic while pitching, and you know, could definitely see it as too much, but at the same time, that's kind of cool. And it's kind of cool to be able to break down those walls with the players and kind of let them to have an environment that does kind of feel like, you know, back in the early days playing with their friends or playing on their loaded travel teams or something like that, where baseball can kind of just be fun. When you, one of my biggest issues with the All-Star Game and the fan voting system used to be with determining home and away for the World Series. And now with that not out of the picture, you should do stuff like the swing off to end the game at the end there. You should do the fun things that do make it feel like an exhibition game. But again, when I'm watching the MLB All-Star Game, it's not like when I feel like, you know, you suffered through the Pro Bowls, the NBA All-Star Games, and until the NHL figured out what they were doing with the, you know, that 4 nation stuff, and the 3-on-3 tournaments were cool. There was still just elements of those games, especially when you're talking about football and basketball, where it's just, it's not taken as serious. But you understand, right? Why would you take the Pro Bowl seriously? Why would you try to get hurt there in that situation? Why are you worried about the NBA All-Star Game and playing good defense when it's all about kind of just showing things off? In baseball, it's still a situation in which, like, you're still facing the high heat, right? You're still facing this stuff. You know, the best batters are facing the best pitchers and some of their best stuff. maybe again, you can kind of put that little grain of salt in there of Kershaw's yakking it up while he's pitching. That's not means he's not hyper focused and locked in about delivering his best start. You wouldn't do that in game 162, for example, or something like that. But I think it just kind of shows that baseball, that the All-Star game format works well for them. And in a sense, you don't have that World Series determination thing, then I don't think you got the controversies are the things to be super upset about with the All-Star game. I don't know. It's kind of changed, and you can tell what I love about all the All-Star game, the home run derby, and everything is just, it's very cool to watch the pro baseball players have fun and treat baseball as the fun sport that it is, the energetic sport that it is. And kind of just show off that side, show off the side of I love watching everyone popping off on the home run derby, and you're watching in the swing off there. You got both sides out of their dugouts, freaking out, watching this thing, all pretty, loving the fact that you're watching guys with big bats. Of course, you would like to see some of the other names that could have been possible for that swing off, of course, but when you're watching the athletes themselves have that much fun and enjoy the experience that much, I mean, that's awesome. Like Hunter Goodman is never going to forget that experience, even though he had a throwing error and went 0 for 1 in his at bat. That still doesn't, it was still awesome to see, like it's cool to see the players all kind of, bonding and that camaraderie amongst the each other there in a game where they still take it serious. They're still flashing the leather. They're still doing things. I mean, the National League was up 6-0. American League storms all the way back, and then that leads into the swing off. That's fun baseball. That's what the All-Star game really should be. It should be moments where we can see the best players doing the best things and creating cool moments like a big multi-run comeback leading into the swing off. And why pay, you don't want to, you can't end in the tie, right? We already know how that went one time for Major League Baseball. So I like kind of, reining it in a little bit too, where it's just like, all right, let's do something out of the box for this. Let's do the swing off. How many times have people brought up and joked around about get rid of extra innings and we should just do the swing off anyway, right? I mean, it's kind of fun and cool to see those things and these ideas get to be come to life there. And this rule has been in effect for a couple of years now. It just hasn't happened. And then for it to pop up in this moment and in this situation is really, really fun to watch one of the best home run hitters we've seen and Kyle Schwarber go up there and do those things in that clutch moment and see the reaction on the field there from the players from both sides. It's just fun. It's just, it is more of an entertaining thing. And it's more of a game for the entertainment's sake. And I can see why, if you're a diehard ball fan and baseball's already done all these changes and there's all these things and you can see this now and you look at it again of, this modern version of baseball, roll your eyes at it. But it's just, I think it's boom. Here's your two main events. You got the draft as well. You got all the other cool events that lead into the weekend there as well, leading into this. And then you have the home run derby, which gets a lot of eyes and players like to be a part of. And then you have the All-Star game, complete with them all wearing their own uniforms this year, which is an added bonus. And it's actually good baseball. It's real baseball, even though it's in the in a quote unquote fake game here. So I just think that when I evaluate that, like, I actually do get excited about the game itself. It's not just the selections. It's not just the process. It's not just any of that. I think the All-Star game is an entertaining product in itself for baseball because it's who doesn't want to see, these players match up against each other? Who doesn't want to see Skeens versus Skubal and to start things off? I mean, why would you not want to highlight these cool things? And same with Murawski, or I'm butchering his name. I know there, the Brewers guy. Why would you not want to see a young phenom? And because again, that whole controversy was he was a replacement, and he was probably a replacement for a replacement. So why not give a chance to say, hey, here's a young guy that's throwing over. I think he threw like 20. He threw a bunch of stuff over 100 miles an hour in the All-Star game. Why would you not want to see that? That highlight the cool stuff of the game. And I think MLB's All-Star game has done a good job of being able to highlight that. I think even with taking out kind of the serious overtone of determining the home field for the World Series, you can kind of take it a little less serious, but it's still baseball. You can't just walk up into the box and take the at bat off. You can't take your head off you can't take your mind off the game. You got to be in there, locked in there, and looking to do damage. So I don't know. What do you think about the All-Star game? Do you think that it's an interesting and fun game, or do you kind of roll your eyes at the selection process and some of the other stuff behind the scenes? It makes it so you're not a fan. Let me know in the comments below. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to start looking ahead again to the second half for the Colorado Rockies coming up next on today's episode. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes Gametime. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. You don't have to endlessly scroll for all those deals to find them. They got the zone deals that are going to pick the best seats in your favorite section for you. And guess what? You're going to know exactly where you're sitting with a great panoramic seat view, so no surprises when you get to the venue. And you can take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Locked On Rockies back with you here on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Free and streaming, of course, on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you are all firing off your Rockies hot takes. Like Raul here, hitting with the good joke over here, which is a pretty fun one, saying no Rockies in the home run derby because they'd probably strike out. Oh, it's a good one. There was a little, it wasn't going to happen, right? Because I didn't fully understand the actual rules of who was being able to be selected for the swing off and all that stuff. But it's like, I don't think it would have been the right call to go Hunter Goodman when you're looking at the options that you had, certainly. But it would have been fun. I mean, the guy hits bombs. The guy knows what he's doing. The guy knows how to hit bombs. But playing some catcher out there in that extreme heat and, kind of already coming back off of, dealing with a little of a nagging injury, I'm all right that he got on the field. Unfortunately, Goody kind of threw the ball. He throws that ball away. That run does end up scoring, and it is a factor in that comeback. Kind of, bringing that 2025 Rockies there to the All-Star game a bit. But what a moment for him, and what a rebound there for here. We're kind of we want to spend some time talking about guys who need to have strong second halves. What a small milestone, or at least actually probably big milestone, honestly, being selected as an all-star in Major League Baseball. Not everyone gets to say that. A lot of people play their whole careers and play solid baseball, and they never get to earn that status. So for Hunter Goodman to be able to add that already to his thing and kind of go from, hey, here's where I was at last year at this time. Here's who I was last year at this time, and here's what I've been able to become. That shows you that growth, man. That shows you that what his process and his philosophy is working for him. And again, he's already played more games than he played in 2024, and in that time, he's got nearly 100 points higher across the board in multiple categories. On his batting there. And just when you're talking about this, he's taking full advantage of his opportunity. He's building off of the things that he worked on and had before. Cut down. There was an article, I believe it was on MLB.com. I think it was either MLB.com. I think it was MLB.com, highlighting the fact that part of the reason why Hunter Goodman was selected to the All-Star games, he's cutting down on those chases, being a more effective batter, someone that we can point at throughout this terrible season and say, look at this young guy right here for the Rockies, and look at this development right here. This is a positive sign and a sign where you can sit there and say, like, hey, this is a situation for the Rockies where we are seeing progress. where we're seeing growth from Goodman, and we're seeing growth from what the Rockies are how they are helping him develop and how they're coaching him up and getting him prepared. So obviously we would have liked to see big fireworks for Hunter Goodman, but that's okay. Getting in the game, doing some catching. I mean, for Hunter to be able to catch some of those arms, right? To be able to catch those some of those hits or those batters there, really cool to see there. But so he was pinch hit for. I actually kind of missed this. He was pinch hit for in the 8th. He's going to catch in the 9th. And Patrick Saunders only mentioning that again. He only saw the one pitch, that ultra aggression there, that hyper aggression of Hunter Goodman on display there. So, but shout outs to Hunter, shout outs to Goody for that. And again, I've gushed a lot about the All-Star game there. So let's kind of shift gears and shift our focus here into the second half of the season for the Rockies here, and who are players that we need to see have strong second halves. And Hunter Goodman is actually one of those. I want to see this season. We've seen great starts to seasons. We've seen great first halves to season. How can we need to see it now translate throughout the rest of the season, going through the real tough days, navigating what his roles and his responsibilities on the team might look like after the trade deadline, when we're talking about his spot in the lineup, a factor, and who is and who isn't on the team. But I mean, in terms of players that I'm keeping my eyes on, of like, I'm locked in and looking at what you're doing. I'm kind of focusing on what you're doing this second half. It's just more of, with the Ryan McMahon experience, if it's taught us anything, you can't just buy in on half a season's worth of work. You can't just buy in on a strong month's worth of work. Goody was kind of going through a little bit of a slump. How is he going to be able to adjust, and how does he can he maintain a full season of all-star quality baseball? But I'd really like to see the two players I talked about the most going into this season really take some steps forward. I'd like to see Brenton Doyle continue to work his way back up and get into a better groove there. Hopefully maybe this, a little bit of time off, a little bit of time to recenter. Saw that he was actually the voice of the trains there at DIA, I think, coming up. So that's always cool. I think that's a nice little milestone to unlock if you're a Colorado athlete, if you get to be the voice of the trains. I think that's always a fun thing. But I'm hoping for Brenton Doyle that this comes in, and it's a time where you can kind of just take a step back for a second, keep regrouping, keep reorganizing, and building off some of the stuff that we started to see, some of the small improvements and some of the better stuff that we're seeing from Brenton Doyle towards the end of the first half of the season. Still a long way to go there. And overall, when you're looking at the numbers, they're still pretty tough. 10 strikeouts over the last 7 games with only a 182 average, a 250 OBP, a 182 slugging. You're sitting there and you're still kind of wincing at those, right? You're sitting there, you're like, oh boy, Doyle, what the heck is going on here? It has not been a good stretch for you. But when you're comparing Brenton Doyle, even though that sample size might not be there, so far in the month of July, we're looking at arguably Brenton Doyle's second best month to the season so far. Got after that hot start there and was able to keep things going up there for a little bit before tweaking that injury a little bit, because that May to those couple of games in March and in about mid-April there was still playing some great ball until things kind of started dipping itself a little bit there towards the end of the month. But so far in the month of July for Brenton Doyle, he's batting .273 with a 313 OBP and a 394 slugging. Got the 12 strikeouts there. Had a few games where he's been able to avoid the strikeouts, but the strikeout bug was back in full force in that Cincinnati series. So hopefully a moment for him to be able to, kind of, like I said, get that regroup there and start being able to add that on there. Only the one home run here. Maybe we'd love to see that pop getting going. We'd like to see the strikeouts get cut out. Brenton Doyle is certainly at the top of my list of players that we are hoping to see more from in the second half. Still a long ways to go, but at least this month we're starting to see a little bit better of some performances. Still some some areas of concerns in the strikeouts and not being able in that area, but at least we're seeing some improvement on the offensive side so far as we've hit the halfway point of July. Now, can we come back? Can we shake off a tough Cincinnati series, use this time off, and start building up that batting average. The batting average coming into the month was at 194. It is up to 202. The OBP is has also increased since the beginning of the month. So there's some good things there. I mean, those are kind of just through the games there. I think those are anyway. I'm just saying there that this was a moment there that we can start looking at Brenton Doyle and kind of having a tiny bit of hope. But this is where we'd like to see Doyle make the adjustment. Doyle do what how was he able to go from his rookie, that first time he was at it, how bad he was on offense, how did he get himself into that place where he was hitting last year? Can he recreate that? Can he recreate that process going forward here into the second half? Let's talk a little bit about Ezequiel Tovar, but I think the Rocky that needs to do something in the second half, the Rocky that needs to have the strongest second half is Michael Toglia. We'll talk about that coming up next. Locked On Rockies here, free and streaming on your favorite streaming service. Back at you here for segment number 3 of today's episode of Locked On Rockies. And we're talking about players that we are hoping for big second halves from and ones that are improving. And I'm kind of focusing on guys that mostly on the offensive side. Of course, I think the pitching staff can be one thing, but I'm hesitant to dive too much into what does that look, what does the second half look like for some of the veterans on this team, because the trade market continues to be that question mark. As we've said time and time again, will the Rockies do anything going against the grain of what they usually do? And what is the market for those Rockies players? And I think, again, the veterans are going to be the ones that you're talking about, because I don't think the Rockies are going to move on from Goodman. They might consider the Brenton Doyle trade, I think, as we've discussed before, but I'm kind of focusing on guys that I don't envision getting traded, because the Rockies are going to be facing a situation where Michael Toglia cannot continue at this rate. He cannot continue to be this poor at what he's supposed to be doing without there being another demotion or some sort of a looking at and saying, this is not working. What we are trying to get him to do, what we're trying to get him to focus on, it is not working. He's got the 10 home runs. You'd like to see him be able to continue to hit the ball over the wall. But we're talking about a guy in his last 30 games here, in his last 110 at bats, is batting 200 with a 273 OBP and only slugging 373. In that time, he struck out 45 times. 45 times, and he's only hit 4 home runs in that point. The defense has not, and it's first base defense, so it's in the grand scheme of things, it's not all that important in depending on how you look at it, because we've seen it's mattered. The bad defense for the Rockies has been a huge problem for them this year, and Michael Toglia has not avoided that. This has to be a wake-up call for Michael Toglia here, because this cannot be the standard. You can't sit here and be banking on Michael Toglia to be a 200 batter with only 10 home runs at this point, who strikes out at an over 30% rate, and close to, when you're looking at this almost 110 at bat sample, he's striking out at almost a 50% rate. I mean, it's insanity. That this is a 40%, a 41%, if my math is correct, strikeout rate right now for Michael Toglia. That's unacceptable. Doesn't matter your inexperience or anything like that. You are not preparing yourself, and you're not locking in enough, and you're not seeing the ball well. That there has to be more there, because you can't keep continuing to just hold on hope that something's going to change. And so we have to see it. And this isn't just me rehashing the same old, Rockies got to develop better, Rockies got to provide resources. This is on Toglia as well. This is very much a prove something second half of the season. Very much a prove it situation. There will be guys that can force their way in, to be playing first base. The Rockies could go with one of these veteran guys to sit there and play first base. Depending on how the situation might shake out with the Farmers and the Arcias. I know that might not be exactly their primary positions, but you might be looking at a situation where you're running out of time, or running out of patience, at least, with Michael Toglia, and these strikeouts. I mean, and the problem is it would be a bigger deal, I think, or more of a warning sign in the eyes for the Rockies if it wasn't for the fact that the rest of the team strikes out at an insane rate as well. Michael Toglia is the Rocky that needs to have the best second half, bar none. It has to be him. He has to be showing something here, because there is going to be a lot of question marks about him throughout the rest of the season if he continues to not hit for the power and continues to strike out at the rate he does, because you just can't strike out at the rate that he does. And then finally, I mean, this is not really a big surprise. I'd really like to see I'd like to see a healthy, strong second half of the season for Ezequiel Tovar. It's already a wash season. Ezequiel Tovar's young. I want to see that these injuries aren't long-term nagging things that are drastically changing who he is and what his abilities are. They might hamper and impact what he's able to do for the rest of the season, or at least maybe in some ways. But this is an opportunity, I think, where for the second, if Tovar comes back, the Rockies go through some changes at the trade deadline, right? Let's just go through this hypothetical. This is the moment for him to continue to step into that kind of bigger role, that leader, more of a leader role there, even being a young guy and not having a ton of the experience. But if he can not only lead behind the scenes, but be able to lead on the field by example, by playing the caliber of baseball that we know he's capable of, that's going to be a great sign for the Rockies. That's going to be something that will help the Rockies, win ball games. Some of the stuff that we've had to navigate and go through here is Tovar missing a lot of time this year, and that's one of the Rockies' best players. So if the Rockies are able to get Ezequiel Tovar on the field, have him be healthy, have him be in a situation in which that he's able to contribute, throughout most games, throughout the rest of the second half of the regular season, he is the type of player that's going to help you flip the script a couple of times and be able to help you get some of those close wins. There is an argument to be made that if the Rockies had their best players on the field when they played those close games, and in the amount of close games they've played, they would win a couple more of those. But Ezequiel Tovar's also been on the field for bad Rockies losses, for bad stretches for the Rockies. So just having Ezequiel Tovar back isn't going to fix things. But it isn't even just a needs to, show me stuff on the field because I need to see him, prove it more or something like that. He needs to be. It's more of, I want to see him be healthy. I want to see him be confident. I want to see him, back feeling comfortable and confident in his own body and his abilities and what his body is allowing him to do. I think that is clearly a situation, I think, who needs to have a strong second half. And I think, just one more kind of name to just keep an eye out as we continue to go through. I think we got to keeping it. And I don't think you can sit here and be like, oh, what a terrible first half for Mickey Moniak. There's problems. But I think Mickey Moniak, if Moniak can continue to kind of impress with the extra base hits, with the ability to, to be a kind of a little bit more of that power thumb, to use a little bit of that speed and things like that, he'll be an interesting case to watch and see what the Rockies decide to do with, as you got to keep getting Tyler Freeman on the field, because he's been, too solid on getting on base and being an effective, guy at the top of the order for you. If Mickey Moniak is able to take advantage of a little bit more playing time than he's been used to in other organizations, that would be great to see. Right? He's in an interesting spot there again with Freeman, with with that outfield kind of being in the situation it's in, with the Doyle situation. Moniak and Doyle, that's going to be kind of a situation that is closely related. So we'll have to see. But I think that it is without a doubt, if there is one Rocky that needs to have a very strong second half, it's got to be Michael Toglia, because there's the veteran players that we have question marks. They might not be on the team after the trade deadline, and some of them might not be on the team after the end of the year. This is a guy that you got to start, making a decision on, because this is the strikeout problem has been going on for a long, long time, and we are not seeing the power surge and the comfortable hitting at Coors Field like we'd hope to see. And that's something we didn't get to, and we'll focus on maybe a little bit tomorrow here, is the fact that the Rockies need to be better at home. The Rockies, if you want to avoid this record, if you want to get yourselves back on the right track, you got to be able to win ball games at home. And that starts with these first couple of series against some solid opponents, some teams that are right around that 500 mark going into this opening series here against the Twins. I believe it's the Cardinals right after that. Let me double check for you. here, as there's a lot of baseball left. Yep, it's Minnesota and St. Louis here, two solid ball clubs with good depth. So how are you going to respond, and how are you going to protect your house, and how are you going to start the second half? We'll have to see. Folks, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, go check out Locked On MLB and Locked On MLB Game Night, breaking down all the games after they happen right there on the Locked On MLB channel. And, of course, if you need more Colorado sports coverage, Locked On Broncos, Avalanche, Nuggets, and Buffs, all free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. Until next time, I'm Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.